doing out there? Welcome to a Word Hole Media presentation of Major League A-Holes. I'm Pete.
I'm Ryan. You are in the hole with Major League A-Holes. Episode 157, I believe. We have not recorded since before Christmas, so we're going to be a bit rusty, or at least I know I will be. I figure we needed to do, we are mid-February already. We need to do an off-season recap episode, just talk about what's happened for our teams since Christmas. Actually, a lot I need to talk about. It doesn't sound like there's much for the White Sox or your Giants, which is kind of surprising. But plenty going on with the Cubs, Tigers, and even the A's. I'm decked out in my A's. I had to dig out my A's garb in tribute to the greatest, potentially my favorite player of all time, Rickey Henderson, passing away since we last joined you. So I wanted to pay tribute to that. We're going to talk about the Cubs convention. Tom Ricketts once again sticks his foot in his mouth. They have traded for yet another Houston Astro.
They love the Astros.
They might be signing another one on top of this, so we'll see.
Astros North.
Yeah. We've got an aesthetics, the first aesthetics of the season with the first episode of this year, as the Cubs have released a new third jersey. So we'll get your thoughts on that. I think you'll know mine. White Sox released a bunch of promotions for the season that seemed very interesting.
They are trying to get people out to the ballpark, no doubt.
Leading the league, and you will be present for almost all of those. I think you're fired up about all those.
There's some pretty good fucking ones in there, but we'll see.
There's some basketball jerseys and everything else to show those guns.
Well, wait until the basketball jersey comes out, folks. I've been strength training. When the basketball jersey debuts in another month or so, it's going to be a gun show on the YouTube channel. All right.
I learned about the strength training during our pregame show, which may not be released.
It will not be released.
My Tigers have been making news. I'm going to just declare Scott Harris a fucking ninja, doing the impossible, re-signing Jack Flaherty after trading Jack Flaherty just a few months earlier. The thing that you said was never possible. Never happens, but it's a Yankee move.
It's happened. I've witnessed it once. The Yankees did it to the Cubs.
Well, we've seen it now once again from my Detroit Tigers. The Tigers going to be also in that similar conversation with the Cubs in the search. Waiting for Bregman is what our buddy Kanopik calls it, as opposed to waiting for Guffman. Your Giants signed, again, in this incestual relationship of all five of our teams, your Giants signed probably the best Tigers pitcher in history, Justin Verlander.
About 5 years too late.
Yeah, probably. We'll talk about that. And then the A's are no longer in Oakland. I think I'm going to call them the Noakland A's from now on, because it's just no one's calling them Sacramento A's. We'll figure it out. But they've actually made some signings, spent a bunch of money as soon as they leave the city. Their president quits as soon as he seals the deal for Vegas. And then, of course, Rickey Henderson passes away. I think the Oakland A's actually killed Rickey Henderson. We'll get to that. So, and we have an asshole of the week. We didn't even talk about that pre-show. I think it's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
Yes. Like I said, we're going to be rusty for a while here, but we'll figure it out. But yes, we have a very obvious asshole of the week if you've been reading the news. So I think with that, we might as well go ahead and jump into the news.
Go Cubs, go!
Chicago. Yeah.
Go Cubs, go! We'll sign all the Astros away as much as we can every day. Go Cubs, go!
Yeah. I'll get to the Astros part of this, the Chicago Astros. Before that, though, we need to jump back almost a month now. CubsCon.
It was definitely con for sure. And not Wrath.
The annual winter celebration of the return of baseball. I've never been to a CubsCon. I think you said you've never been to a Sox Fest.
No.
It sounds interesting, but at the same time, Jesus. I mean, traveling downtown in the middle of winter, the coldest months of the year, it doesn't sound that appealing. I've gone to an A's Fest and Giants Fest back in 2005 when I was living out there. Because of course it was 65, 70 degrees, and I just rode my bike to both of them. So that was fun, but that's a whole different ball game. I've never been to a Tigers Fest. I forget what they even call that, but Tigers Caravan, I think they call it. Whatever. But Cubs Con, it's kind of fun to watch from afar, but it's just, January. I'm starting to get ready for baseball. It's kind of a hopeful thing. Unfortunately, Tom Ricketts continues to speak during these things. And he continuously puts his foot in his mouth. And I don't understand it. He's not a stupid guy. And I'm confused what his strategy is or what his thinking is, why he even speaks to the media during these things. As the White Sox had their Sox Fest Live, Jerry Reinsdorf was there and did not speak to the media, which is probably the smartest move he's ever made. Unfortunately, Tom Ricketts doesn't take that same tact. Not only does he talk during these things, he brings up money consistently, which is just hilarious. This time he said fans shouldn't be focusing on the money they spend or are not spending. He thinks it's a false narrative that leads to wrong thinking. And you and I have chronicled for years now. That's exactly what fans are thinking about. That's a lot of what they think about, especially with a team that is clearly a major market club, big market team, its own fucking television network, incredible revenue streams from all over the place, and yet they act like they're a middle market team, struggling to stay up, trying to get in the upper echelon of spending, but they essentially choose not to. And fortunately, I feel like I'm kind of the old man screaming at the cloud or screaming into the abyss as, a crackpot podcaster or a keyboard junkie, keyboard warrior, as I actually blogged about this in mid-January, right after it came out. But I felt vindicated because it's not just us crackpots out here. Ken Rosenthal actually chimed in after these comments by Tom Ricketts. And I've said it over and over again. I think Ken Rosenthal is the most respected baseball journalist out there. So when he decides to chime in, it's significant. And he raked Tom Ricketts over the coals. And I couldn't have been more happy when I saw this in The Athletic. When Tom Ricketts talks about, fans shouldn't be focused on the money part. Ken astutely pointed out that, well, you bought the Cubs back in 2009 for under $1 billion, and they are now worth $4.2 billion. You also have it might be the most this year. I know it was last year, but it's at least among the most expensive tickets in all of baseball. When you keep saying you shouldn't talk about money, you could easily lower your ticket prices if it's not about the money. The best comment that Ken made is like, if you don't want it to be about the money, just open your books. Tell us what you're making, and then it won't be about the money anymore. So in my blog piece, I ended it by just open your books or shut your mouth. I've railed against this for a long time. At least, what the Cubs payroll just magically seems to appear just below the first level of the competitive balance tax. That's just an arbitrary line they've drawn. Crane Kenny goes on the air from time to time telling us how the Cubs business is it's a closed system where all revenues that the Cubs make go back into the payroll. Again, I call bullshit on that, because how does it just magically appear? Those numbers reconcile just below the competitive balance tax. This time, Tom Ricketts used the famous quote, they try to break even. And that's going to live in infamy along the lines of biblical losses. As breaking even is just that same idea that same propaganda that Crane Kenny's been spewing for years, that all the revenues the Cubs make go right back into the payroll. And of course, it can't be true. It's also like an accounting trick, because what Tom Ricketts always fails to mention, and I've heard few people even talk about, is Tom Ricketts' side business. One of his many side businesses is called Hickory Street Capital, which happens to be the real estate development company that owns all of Wrigleyville, potentially the most lucrative neighborhood in North America. Are those revenues counted as part of Cubs revenues? I sincerely doubt it, because their payroll would have been up amongst the Dodgers and the Mets. They would have been in the running for Juan Soto. It wouldn't have been a question if they actually activated all of their resources that they make off the Cubs in the neighborhood to be in that upper echelon. And they simply are choosing not to. So the more Tom Ricketts talks about money and says it's not about the money, it's always about the money. And fortunately, we have true journalists, respected journalists joining the fight against this propaganda and bullshit. And Ken Rosenthal is a fucking hero. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate you, Ken Rosenthal.
Yeah, I mean, when you hear it, for me, listening to it as a White Sox fan, he sounds like Jerry Reinsdorf.
It's not a good way to sound.
No. And it is, he sounds like a lot of, actually, I shouldn't just say Jerry Reinsdorf. He sounds like a lot of other baseball owners too. And I feel like you get in the room with these guys, and he was not obviously influenced at first, but once he got that World Series ring and took care of that part of the business, then he's been content with getting out there and acting like majority of the other owners act. Like, oh, well, I can't sign these guys because I'm breaking even. And we take every penny we make and put it back into this organization. And if you show up, the Cubs can't say if you show up to the ballpark, but, that's a White Sox line. But I mean, it's really disappointing, to your point, because I've just come to terms with my situation, but we all thought after 2016 that the Cubs were going to be a legitimate contender while Ricketts owned the team, pretty much. And yeah, you could expect a little lull here and there, but not to the degree of what's happened.
Well, and they sold us on the idea of the marquee network and fans having to pay for the Cubs for the first time beyond taking them off of terrestrial television.
Right.
They said that revenue was going to go back into the team. And, this is a good thing for the competitive part of the Cubs. Like this is competing against the Dodgers and the Mets and the Yankees. And that just has not come to fruition. Every time he says we're not supposed to talk about the money. So it's just they're selling us a bill of goods, and we're sick of it. The angst is rising. The bullshit is being called out by respected journalists now, not just crackpots like me. So I respect it. But along those lines with being cheap or money coming into the headlines, the Cubs failed to make an agreement before arbitration with Kyle Tucker, their new trade acquisition, the arguably a top 5 offensive player in the game. They were reportedly $2.5 million apart and could not come to an agreement. And they eventually did just before Cubs Con started, magically enough. But just before they actually had to go to arbitration. That's why I'm confused why this even became news, because they actually did come to an agreement. But the idea that they let it become news is so stupid and just such a bad look. I mean, it's like trading for Tucker and then arguing over money is like you finally get the hottest chick to agree to go out on a date with you. And before you get to the restaurant, you're arguing over who's going to pay the bill. Like, what are you doing? Like, why would you do this? So it's just, in the end, it's not a big deal. It's just a bad look, especially when they keep bringing up money. And if a team like that with that much is arguing over, $2.5 million, and they settled in the middle, of course.
Right.
The Cubs were offering 15 and he wanted 17.5 and they ended up at 16.25. It's so predictable, so easily avoidable, just a bad look. But beyond that, it's a harbinger that Kyle Tucker's here for 1 year. They are not signing him long term, no matter how great he is. They've already demonstrated in that relationship that they are going to be penny pinching, and why would he need to settle for anything besides the most money that someone's going to give him from here on out? So I think they've kind of guaranteed, they've put the writing on the wall that Kyle Tucker's here for 1 year. That's an interesting timeline in a lot of ways, because Jed Hoyer happens to be in the last year of his contract. He's on the hot seat. This could be the end of the Jed Hoyer era, which would be pretty amazing, because I don't know where they go from here. But this is a pivotal moment for the Cubs organization. In that regard, it seems like they need to go for it if they're going to have a top 5 player in all of baseball on their roster only for this year. They need to make it happen. Finally, they can't just win 83 games and finish 10 games out of first place again.
Right.
To that end, Jed Hoyer traded for yet another Houston Astro, Ryan Pressley, their former closer, who was usurped by I'm drawing a blank. Josh Hader, which led to kind of a down year for Pressley. He struggled outside of the closer role.
Sounds familiar.
Not quite as effective. In fact, he's 36 years old, still solid. I think he's got a 3.5 ERA last year. He did close out the 2022 World Series, so he's got potentially one of the best postseason records of any closer, not named Mario Rivera.
Nirvana.
Sorry, I told you I was going to be rusty, so get used to it.
Nariano Ravinardo Minaro.
So it's interesting that he's, aging, but not aging rapidly, kind of on the downside. I've seen stats where his fastball has come down 1 mile per hour each of the last 3 years. Anecdotally, I can tell you in this year's wild card series, the Tigers lit him up for 3 runs over like 2/3 of an inning to win that wild card series. So Pressley was a big part of why the Tigers actually beat the Astros. So there's some red flags there, but Cubs didn't have a real closer in the bullpen. So this is their answer to that. We will see if they add another Houston Astro former, as Alex Bregman is in the last big name free agent that hasn't been signed this offseason. The Cubs and my beloved Tigers are in the running for that. I basically split my time throughout the day listening to Detroit Sports Talk Radio and Chicago Sports Talk Radio, and the topic is the same. Alex Bregman. Bring us Alex Bregman. So I'll get to my thoughts on Bregman more in the Tigers segment. I'll break that down a little bit more, but I think it'd be hilarious if suddenly the Cubs have 3 former Astros in one offseason. Not sure what that really says, but
what are your with the moves they've done so far? What's your thoughts on? I know this isn't the prediction show, but since Pacoda came out, I'd be interested to hear. What do you think? What would you project the Cubs to win this year?
I haven't seen the Pacoda projections. And I don't remember. I feel like we poo-poo those quite a bit, but you seem to be fired up about them more than me, maybe. But Kyle Tucker,
I do. I love them because it's always. Although
it's fun to look back.
I would say recently they've been pretty accurate, but there were some years early on where not so much. But they obviously have cleaned up the algorithms. So
I feel like the last 2 years, at least with the Cubs, I've predicted them to be an 84 win team, and they win 83 every year. So I've been pretty close on that. I feel like they might be a few wins higher than that. I would say maybe the high 80s, maybe 87. I think I've actually heard about this Pagoda rating for the Cubs, and it's actually higher than that, which I was surprised by. What is it actually?
90.9. So basically 91 wins with a 86.4% chance to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I love to hear that. I don't see it without Bregman. Bregman would change that. I feel like they've taken a step forward in a way by swapping out Tucker and Cody Bellinger. They would have been far further ahead if they just held on to Bellinger, but they have told us over and over again they're going to reinvest that money that they saved with Bellinger, giving him away. Essentially, they paid for him to go away. So yeah, I don't see a major. I mean, that's a 8-win jump over what they were last year.
Yeah,
Pagoda saying I don't see that. I see a couple wins at most. Of course, things, if things break right, you get 5 more wins and things look great. So I guess it's it. But yeah, I disagree. I'd go 87.
The craziest part about it is they have the Brewers only at 80 wins.
Again, the Brewers' black magic defies math. So, I mean, who predicted them to beat the Cubs by 10 games last year? Like nobody had them doing that. But they always do it. So, we'll get to our prediction show in a couple of weeks. But the Brewers, they lose their best offensive player, they lose their best reliever, they lost their best pitchers in the rotation last year, and yet they're still great. And they lost their manager, and yet they still dominate somehow. So, yeah, I'm curious how the math worked for Pagoda and the Cubs this year, but I guess we'll see. That's part of the fun.
Yeah.
Well, last on my list for Cubs topics, we have to talk about our first aesthetics of the year, as the Cubs took CubsCon as an opportunity to release their brand new Electric Blues third uniform. These actually replace the previous Nike City Connect Wrigleyville uniforms that we ripped on pretty well. They're okay, but they're convoluted, and I didn't think they looked that great. It didn't look like a Cubs team to me. The navy blue didn't quite work. I think those have been retired officially, so we don't have to talk about those ever again. These new blues, electric blues uniforms, I'm curious to get your thoughts on. You've got the whole description there, which is always fun for us to go through. But essentially, it's a powder blue jersey, kind of a throwback look. It's definitely a throwback look with a hat, with a white front, blue brim, blue 2/3 of the back, with a new logo that's inspired by the Chicago Blues music heritage. Kind of a throwback look towards that, kind of influenced by like electric guitar company logos like Gibson or Fender, or potentially amp logos like Marshall. I guess I'll give you my rating after we're done talking about it. But what do you want to read the description, or do you want to give your thoughts?
I think the jersey. I mean, I think the jersey. No, I'm getting my thoughts. I think the jersey's fine. Like, I don't hate it. I think it's better than the Wrigleyville jersey. I always like the powder blue. They're calling it baby blue. They call it baby blue.
I've called it electric blue.
Yeah,
and it's definitely powder blue. Powder blue. It's interesting. If you look, I was almost going to do an aesthetic segment just about powder blue uniforms throughout baseball.
Yeah,
back probably during COVID when we were trying to come up with subjects to talk about. But I looked into that a little bit. The Cubs were actually the first to wear powder blues back in 1941. So they're the pioneers of it, but they didn't wear it for very long. They returned in 1970 with seemed like half the majors started wearing powder blue uniforms on the road. And I never understood why that happened. Every team, the White Sox even had a powder blue uniform, didn't they?
Yeah, in the 70s, when they had the red striped jerseys, their alternate uniform was powder blue.
Yeah, I mean the Cardinals had it, the Blue Jays, of course, Phillies, Kansas City, everybody had it for a while. I think it was up to 10 or 11 clubs throughout baseball had them at one point in its peak. And I learned why that happened. It was the advent of the newfangled color television inspired that, because the Blues showed up better on the TV than gray uniforms, and people were really fired up about color TV back in the 70s.
Nice.
So that's where that came from. I always wondered that, and it kind of died out throughout the 70s into the 80s, and it was pretty much gone. Now it's a cool throwback thing, but these definitely give me thoughts of Montreal Expos immediately. I think everyone sees that right away. There's slight differences, but at the same time, it definitely looks like a Chicago Cubs uniform, which I appreciate. I didn't think the Wrigleyville uniforms did at all. So that part I definitely like. All right, let's go through the descriptive copy, which is always hilarious.
Here we go. We'll start with the lead-in. The Chicago Cubs blue alternate uniform pays tribute to the team's history and Chicago's contribution to the electric blues movement that shaped music worldwide. Ding, ding, ding.
I think that's a solid. I almost think this may have been an alternative concept idea that maybe Nike pitched when they were talking about the City Connects. Like they could have used this instead of that Wrigleyville neighborhood idea. Like this could have
Right.
been it. This might have been plan B if they hadn't gone with those. So it's almost like they realized that wasn't executed or as popular as they thought they would be. And this is certainly a connection with the city of Chicago and the history of Chicago, the Blues. I think that's cool. I like that idea.
This is the first time since '81 that they'll be wearing a baby blue jersey on the field.
Mm-hmm.
That's bullet one. You already mentioned this, but the hat and jersey chest patch feature a new logo that merges the details from the Blues era Cubs uniform with inspiration from music instrument brands. I also, doesn't the C sort of remind you of the Negro League C?
Yeah.
That they used? I thought that right away when I saw it. In fact, when I first looked at it, I thought, oh, they're doing like an alternate Negro League jersey to pay homage to something, but that wasn't the case. But
but there's been several different Cubs C logos over the decades. There's been several that kind of look like that, and they've definitely borrowed from the Negro League's uniforms too. So I can see that.
The sleeve patch features custom lettering on a guitar pick divided by an electric bolt, symbolizing Chicago's legacy as the birthplace of the electrified blues.
I like that too.
The jersey's custom numerals and nameplate take cues from the Blues era typography.
I'm all about typography.
And the socks pay tribute to the iconic blues anthem Sweet Home Chicago and feature a 6-string guitar stripe.
Oh, so it's like 6 stripes around the socks.
Yeah, and then then Sweet Home Chicago is stitched with a lightning bolt underneath it.
Gotta have Sweet Home Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. Like
it's mainly it's the powder blue color, baby blue with royal blue and red accents and some white. So,
and honestly, I read this list, I look at the jersey. There's nothing that's reaching. There's nothing like you don't even need to read this to get it. Like if you look at this jersey, you're like, oh, that looks like a guitar pick. And like some of these things we've read over the years, you're like, what? Are you fucking kidding me? Like the little dots represent the dots that are on the bottom of the ocean in San Francisco, whatever. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like this
that no one would ever understand.
This to me just makes sense. I think it's a cool looking jersey. Like I don't have any. I think it's a basic step forward from the Wrigleyville jersey for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting because I was ready to make fun of that whole description. I hadn't read it in a while, but there's really nothing to make fun of. There's no false pretense. There's no bullshit. It's just kind of obvious. It's kind of obvious stuff. Which the basic tenet of good design is it should just be self-evident. You just see it and it makes sense. You don't have to explain it. So if you have to explain what's going on, you've made a mistake in your design. And I don't think they have. I think if it comes down to it, I'm giving it 2 middle fingers up.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm giving it 2 middle fingers up too. I when you sent it to me, I was like, like I said, first look at first, I thought, oh, this is they're doing some sort of tribute to the Negro Leagues or something, but it is definitely a heritage type jersey of the African American community, so that's kind of cool. So that could have been maybe a little bit a part of it too. So
I just wish these were the City Connect uniforms all along.
Yeah, exactly.
They could have just kept these forever. So, but wrong is righted. I like it. I think this is unprecedented. I don't remember the last time we gave 4 full middle fingers up for anything.
Yeah, there was something last year. There was a City Connect we really liked. I don't remember which one. Definitely was in San Diego. But
I like that one.
Anyway, hey, before we move on to the White Sox, I always like to have a fun little transition. And I mentioned this to you that I was going to have to do some investigating because times are desperate at Wrigley Field to fill those seats because somehow I was approached to become a season ticket holder.
That's right.
Of the
you
Chicago
sent me that.
Cubs.
I forgot about that.
And it turns out, Smitty.
Why did you sign up to be on their season ticket holder waiting list?
That's the funniest thing. I never did. I never did.
We'll see.
And guess what?
I might have to do some investigative journalism to see your email habits.
I get this email and I was like, what the fuck is this? Why the fuck would I want to be a Cubs season ticket holder other than maybe to make a couple of bucks on selling tickets? I mean, I'd probably go to a few games, but like,
now this was directly from the Cubs sales. Like you had a ticket representative contacting you.
She is a real person who works for the Chicago Cubs. Right. It's not a scam. So what I decided to do is I decided to take it a step further. And I said, why is this person approaching me? Other than they probably have a list of names of people who have purchased tickets recently to Cubs games. That's they could get that through tickets.com or whatever. So I did look into I just went and said, hey, I want to purchase 2 tickets, become a season ticket holder. Well, oddly enough, this is probably the first time, at least I can think of this happening, and maybe it's been like this and we just didn't know about it. But there were easily 17, what did I count? 17 sections that had season tickets available for them throughout the ballpark.
Whoa.
That you could get tickets for. Like I could just go online and become a season ticket holder without any waiting list, without
Really?
anything. Yes.
That's interesting.
Yes.
That's an underreported story.
I was in fucking shock. I was like, because level 1, I was like, well, let me even go on and see like, why is this person even reaching out to me? Like, I'm surely they don't have any season tickets really available. Well, they are. And
don't call me Shirley.
There's good seats too in like the lower bowl and in some of those side, like a third and first base line sections right up against the wall there. And I was, it was jaw dropping to me that happened. And she just contacted me again. It's like, do you, I like, are you
string her along?
Are you
see what you can learn from this?
You know, we have some great 20 game packages that might fit your budget. And what I find funny about it is I don't even return calls from the White Sox on season tickets. So I'm definitely not going to return an email from the fucking Cubs on season tickets. But I couldn't let that story go because I was shocked to find that you could just go on and get season tickets. And to me, that is finally the fan base saying enough is enough.
Yeah.
You know, put you got to get back to your winning ways there, Tommy boy, or, you know, we're not going to just sell out this season for you before it even starts.
You can't finish a distant second in a division where you have every advantage over your opponents. I mean, it's ridiculous, and it consistently happens, and people see through the bullshit, and they're not giving you their money anymore, Tommy. Figure it out. You need to spend. You got to spend money to make money. So, that's interesting. We're gonna have to follow that story. I have not seen that anywhere. That's fascinating because I used to be on the Cubs season ticket holder waiting list, and I actually got called back in 2012, I think it was, right at the beginning of the Theo era. And I was never going to actually do it, but yeah, I've been a 10 game pack holder for probably 10 years before I moved away. I haven't received a single note from the Cubs. I used to have a representative that would contact me from time to time, just because I had purchased 10 game or 12 game packs before, but they're not even reaching out to me. Maybe they just know I'm 250 miles away now. Maybe their database is that good. They know these things. And you've now moved to the north side of Chicago, so they probably know that. So they figured you've got to be interested in the Cubs in some degree.
Yeah.
Clearly their information was incorrect. They need to work on their chat GPT bot a little bit better.
Exactly. They gotta filter that list a little bit better. But speaking of going to the ballpark, Smitty, how about we start off with some big news coming out of the South Side over the last couple of weeks, the 2025 White Sox giveaways.
Isn't this the only news coming out of the South Side? I mean, big news. I don't know about promotions and giveaways, but I think it's the only news at this point.
I mean, folks, we got some dandies. We've got
you guys have always been great at promos, maybe out of necessity to get people to come to the ballpark, but I feel like this year there seems to be more than ever and more that are interesting than ever. Maybe, or maybe from an outsider's perspective. I'm wondering what you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, they're so good. My brother, who is very, very disturbed by the White Sox and not, he's not a season ticket holder anymore either. Him and Sam.
He dropped out of our baseball league a couple years ago. I'm so distraught.
He's dropped the season tickets, but they have gone full tilt boogie on the promos. Every Sunday is a bobblehead giveaway.
That's a lot.
Freaking Sunday. That's a lot. I don't have room for that many bobbleheads, nor am I going to go every Sunday home game.
I think you might have to, or are you just going to go on eBay to get them all?
Well, no, that was a funny thing. My brother's like, I'm like, well, I don't know. Some of those giveaways are so good, you're going to have to wait in line. He's like, oh yeah, maybe it's easier just to spend $50 for it on eBay. Like that's the non-point of the whole thing. I would not spend $50 on a giveaway on eBay.
No. Yeah.
But
illogic.
There's some cool ones I want to point out that I think are really cool. Well, one of the things is probably the coolest weekend to go is when, of course, it's time for another statue, and it's a Mark Burley statue that's going up. I know it's shocking. They're doing a statue, but it's a Mark Burley statue.
Yeah, I want to make fun of it, but Mark Burley's he's definitely my favorite White Sox in history, just because you and I saw the no-hitter on a rainy Tuesday night in May, whatever the fuck the year that was. He's got the no-hitter, the perfect game. He was just always the coolest dude. There's no reason I hate the White Sox. There's no reason to hate Mark Burley for any reason. He's just a normal, quiet dude. He also pitched the most enjoyable games you could watch because they were all done in 1 hour and 50 minutes usually.
Yeah.
He didn't think out there. He just threw whatever AJ put down there. Like whatever he told him to do, he would pitch it and not overthink anything. And he's on the verge of a Hall of Fame career because of it. So getting a statue, for the amount of statues you guys have done, Mark Burley definitely deserves one. I think it's they've kind of set a low bar for that, but he's gone well over that, I believe.
And so that's the weekend, I believe, of July 11th. And this is the one bobblehead I really want. They are giving away that Sunday a bobblehead with arguably the four greatest starting pitching performances you would ever see in a fucking playoff run of the White Sox. So the bobblehead has Burley, Contreras, Garland, and Garcia on it.
Yeah, because this is the 20-year anniversary of your World Series championship.
Yeah, so they're leaning into that heavy. And we'll get
except at Sox Fest.
Well, no, they fixed that. Remember, so we'll get to that. Yeah.
All right. Sorry.
But some other cool promotions, just real quick. Like early on, Saturday, April 12th, probably cold as fuck, but they're giving away this 1920s jersey hoodie. Looks fucking dope.
Jersey hoodies. Yeah, I remember seeing that. Those look pretty cool. It's like something you could actually wear quite a bit.
Yeah. Then there's
look ridiculous like your basketball jerseys.
Oh, my basketball jerseys are dope. What are you talking about? Another one, which I'm not sure I would wear, but I think the ladies might like. Miami Marlins, Saturday, May 10th, 1940s varsity sweater with like the 40s Sox logo. That was a little more of a block type of logo with the O in one section of the S and the X in the other. It looks like something that might be from the movie Animal House. Is a really cool on May 24th, 1914 World Tour shirt. Cool throwback logos on there. I'm wearing my favorite giveaway from last year right now.
Oh, that is a cool shirt. I forgot about that.
Sweatshirt they gave away, which this and I still have yours here. And of course, if you're watching on YouTube, the La Pantera.
La Pantera with the fucking Pegasus wings.
Pegasus wings.
I need that.
But
don't put that on eBay.
That's Saturday. I have it here in the box for you still. Saturday, May 24th. Now, they followed that awesome promotion up with what has to be, to me, the worst fucking promotion they've ever done.
Oh, no.
On Sunday.
Worse than Disco Demolition?
No, Disco Demolition's a banger. Literally. Sunday, May 25th, they are giving away to 7,500 fans. I'm not sure who would want them. A Charles Comiskey bobblehead.
What? Oh my God.
That is as good as giving a Jerry Reinsdorf bobblehead away. Who the fuck wants one of those?
Wow. I could see them like giving away like a Reinsdorf like statue in effigy or something. Like you could hang him or set him on fire or something.
Yes.
Comiskey bobblehead. That is ill-informed. Like that is not knowing your history. That he's not anyone to be celebrated. Right. That is bizarre. Like what is that? Who would want that?
I know. I say the same thing. The Mexican Heritage jersey looks pretty cool this year. There's a 1993 Divisions Champs rope hat. I actually remember the hat when it was out originally back then. Wow. It's kind of cool. It'd be cool for free. Like I said, there's a shit ton of bobbleheads. I'm not going to cover those.
That's crazy. They're doing one every Sunday. That blows out. Like minor league teams don't even do that. I mean, and their business is based on giveaways a lot. So that's amazing.
Here's one of my other favorite ones, and I'm on the fence. I want to see your reaction to this one. I don't know if you saw this one. They're giving away a 1959 Comiskey Park radio, and they even put it's a working AM FM radio.
I think that's fucking cool. I thought you'd be all over that. Actually,
I think it's kind of cool. I think it looks great. It's a cool replica of it. I don't know that I'd ever really use it, but hey, maybe we do live in the morning.
We do live in bizarre times where artificial intelligence could take out the entire internet. So then you still have your AM FM radio right there and you can still listen.
True.
Without streaming.
True.
Sorry, I went dark there.
Yeah. If you're into the Grateful Dead, that's a pretty cool White Sox Grateful Dead jersey they're giving away. Now here's an interesting one. Remember the Bears jersey Ditka, that sweater vest Ditka always wore?
With the navy with the two orange bars surrounding bears.
Yeah. So the Sox are doing an 83 version of it for the first 15,000 fans that have the Sox 83 logo on it. The two red bars Sox.
That's good. That's a good
look.
That's
against the Twinkies on August 23rd. This is another funny one. I thought another funny bobblehead. They're doing a Ken Griffey Jr. bobblehead. Now, my question to you is why? Because it
was he there for an entire season?
Yeah, that was the year I was.
His final season.
Is it Kenny trying to put together his 1993 fantasy baseball team that won it all? Because
yikes,
he's well past his prime. He did not perform well.
No.
Why are we? Why are we?
Very predictable.
Yes.
I mean, he is a Hall of Famer. He's one of the most popular baseball players of all time. I don't know if many people realize he was with the White Sox outside of Chicago, but I guess they gotta. I mean, if they're gonna have a fucking bobblehead every Sunday, they gotta figure out something to put together for each one.
Yeah, so those are the ones I wanted to really highlight. Like I said,
I'll try to put together a graphic for the YouTube video that shows a lot of these, so we're not just describing them or poorly describing them, so people can actually get a view of what these are. But there was I saw a couple of the graphics that the White Sox use to promote that, and there was several that you mentioned that kind of piqued my interest. I thought looked pretty fucking cool, actually.
Yeah, and then all the all the standards are there. There's halfway to St. Patrick's Day with the St. Patrick's Day hockey jersey if you need a fucking another one of those. And there's the Hawaiian shirt.
It's your favorite holiday, isn't it?
It is my favorite holiday. It's the only one that is a true celebration, really, of getting wasted. It's finally a holiday that does it right.
I've been to your home on many occasions for St. Patrick's.
You sure have.
Had a good time.
Doing a base. Sometimes we're doing a freaking fantasy baseball draft during that.
I don't remember having a bad time. So
it's never a bad time, Smitty. It's never a bad time. But all those promos were announced right around the same time as the Sox were relaunching Sox Fest as Sox Fest Live. Yeah.
First time since the pandemic that Sox Fest has returned. Apparently the White Sox just deemed the world safe enough this year to be able to reconvene. It's a brand new theme. The live part, I guess I didn't fully understand that. I don't even remember where your Sox Fest were before. But is there live bands? Is that
Yeah,
the idea?
there
Or
were live bands there. Yeah.
okay.
And I don't know if you guys remember, for those of you who are regular listeners or viewers on YouTube, I lost my shit last episode about how I had read that they were going to have the they were going to celebrate the World Series team and have people from the World Series team present, and I got the list here and I went through the list of invitees, and
Yeah.
it was like awful. But
Yeah, it was a bunch of new players
yeah.
that, it could be interesting, but it had nothing to do with 2005. I know Mark Burley was there. Did they add to
Yeah,
the
yeah.
list?
So yeah, Freddie Garcia was there, Pasednik. So
Sweaty
they brought
Freddy. Wow.
yeah, so they brought in. They did finally make good, very close to maybe a week out of when it was gonna be happening. They announced that those persons were attending. So
But
interesting
still, they
enough.
three of the entire roster from
Oh
that year
no,
is
you
all
know
they
what?
got,
I
or
thought I had the list. I apologize, everyone. I thought I
I
had the
didn't.
list
I thought
here.
I saw the list and it still wasn't that big. It
It
wasn't
was
much
like
more than
it was
three.
about eight
Oh,
people.
was it that many? Okay,
Yeah,
maybe I missed it.
yeah. But anyway, at the end of the day, I didn't see a lot of coverage on it. It didn't get a ton of coverage, but I went to fellow bloggers' websites, Sox Machine
Gotta go to
and
Sox Machine.
and Sockside Fan, and they had some pretty positive things to say about it. Overall, they said it was spaced out correctly. They both Sockside Fan had bought the MVP tickets, and it sounded like it was really worth it because by getting the MVP tickets, you were able to personally have a set time to get pictures with players and stuff like that. So
Oh, that's pretty cool.
they had some cool pictures posted of with Mark Burley and Freddie Garcia, and then um, uh, new manager Will Venable, who they said they met at a special cocktail hour that occurred like when the fest ended for MVP ticket holders, and they said like they are in love with Will Venable. He stood there and talked to them for 15 minutes, like
Oh, that's cool.
really got to know them and hung out with them. So they said there were
Gets
some
it.
drawbacks. There was like an MVP entrance, and they said it was already fucking cold outside, and they got ushered into a holding area that had no heat
Oh,
for a
ouch.
half hour that really did nothing to benefit them, by having this early entry. So
I did.
that was something that was a bit of a negative, but overall they said it was a really positive experience the way it was handled.
I do remember some coverage on 670 The Score inside the clubhouse. They were talking about that. People are a bit miffed that there wasn't any readable like parking very close to the venue, so they were shuttling fans from White Sox parking lots to the venue,
Yeah.
but they put them on like normal school buses.
Oh God.
Like it wasn't like
Good
they could have
Lord.
chartered a couple, nice real buses. But yeah, they were shuttling fans back and forth with regular school buses, which just seems kind of low rent. But that was one complaint I heard about it. But other than that, it's unfair. But people are posting pictures at the early in the evening of each night, and there's hardly anyone there. Like Len Casper, one of Len Casper's bands was playing, and there was like one guy rocking out in the whole area. But then I did hear that the place got packed within like 2 hours of that. So it wasn't like there are no White Sox fans interested anymore. As
Right.
the way people were trying to portray it on social media was a bit unfair. But I'm glad. I mean, even though you don't attend, it just seems right for the Sox to have Sox Fest back. Thought it was really gross that they neglected to do that just to kind of stay, distance themselves from the fans as much as they could as they were going through such a bleak period as it felt. I mentioned earlier, Jerry Reinsdorf was there, but he did not speak to the media, which was a really good idea considering what Tom Ricketts did in speaking to the media. So uh, I guess it's good it's back. I'm glad they had some 2005 White Sox. Glad to hear there's going to be a lot more 2005 recognition throughout the year, including the Burley statue. That's going to be fucking cool.
I think the other big news for the White Sox is they're going to get major improvement this year, according to Pacoda. They are actually going to win 60 to 61 ball games this year.
Wow.
Now that's still 100 losses, or 61 to 62 ball games. Still going to be around 100 losses, but that's a hefty improvement.
20 game improvement. What are they basing that on?
I don't know, because similar to the Cubs number, I just don't see the offseason improvements that are pushing them over the top.
Well, one stat I did see that you'd be interested in is the White Sox have the largest decrease in payroll across the majors, and 47%.
Yeah, I mentioned that earlier a couple episodes ago.
Yeah. At this point, it's exactly 47% less in payroll. Cubs are on that list. They have the fourth biggest decrease in payroll in the majors, which is ridiculous.
They're just breaking even, dude.
Yeah, they're trying to break even.
Yeah. So that's all I got for my White Sox, So not much going on for once. Usually I somehow dominate this show with the worst team in baseball, but
the irony, for years you have dominated with White Sox news, and there just isn't that much. So
yeah.
Well, I guess we'll transition over to my Detroit Tigers, who, going into this offseason had the brightest outlook of anyone, making the playoffs, winning a playoff series. A lot of consternation amongst Tiger fans that the Tigers are not spending enough money. And we keep bringing this up with all of our teams. But one thing they did spend money on, and a miracle in some people's minds, is that not only did the Tigers trade away Jack Flaherty and get better, making the playoffs and winning a playoff series against the Astros, they traded for a starting shortstop in Trey Sweeney and a top 100 prospect from the Dodgers, catching prospect that I cannot recall his name right now, but they were also able to pull off the impossible, which you have said was not going to happen. Sign Jack Flaherty again, and he has come back to the Tigers on a 2-year, $35 million deal with a player opt-out. It's literally, I do this pretty much every year, and I know it's pie in the sky, but it's fun to do. I did this with Eduardo Rodriguez. I was like, go ahead and trade him at the deadline. We'll just sign him back because he's a free agent. We'll reap the benefits of the prospects we procure, and then just sign him back for money, which costs nothing other than the billionaire owner's money. So this rarely happens across baseball. You happily point out that almost never happens. It's true. I think you said it happened with the Yankees one time. I don't remember that example, but
Chapman.
Oh, of course it's Chapman.
Yeah.
But Scott Harris pulled off the impossible. I'm calling him a fucking ninja. Re-signing Jack Flaherty for a very reasonable deal. And it just catapulted, again, the Tigers rotation, easily the best in the division, maybe the best in the American League.
Whoa.
When you already have the best pitcher in baseball, Tarek Skubal, you have the game's top pitching prospect, Jackson Jobe, joining the rotation. You've got Reese Olson, who before he got injured last year was in the top 10 in the American League, I would say. And then you've got the fifth man battle between Casey Mize, former number 1 overall pick. You've got Matt Manning. You've got Cater Montero, who pitched really well last year. You've got a lot of competition, but we're talking about for the fifth starter. They now have the highest payroll in the American League Central. That is much against the narrative of a lot of Detroit Sports Talk Radio and a lot of fans that are just mercilessly beating down Scott Harris, which never made any sense to me because Scott Harris is given a budget by the owner, Chris Ilitch. Criticism towards Chris Ilitch is more justified than towards Scott Harris because he's the ultimate decider of what funds will or will not be spent on the team. So the idea that the Tigers aren't spending enough, I think I've fought this last episode. I feel like fans are literally just making a competition out of how much money is spent. And I think that's not the way to look at a mid-market team like the Tigers. They need to be smart with their money. They need to be competitive with how much they're spending, but they don't need to be among the top teams. But they're already outspending their competition in the division. They are the second highest increase in payroll over last season right now, only behind the Orioles in the American League. So if you really want to measure the Tigers' offseason success by how much money they're spending, they're doing that. So I don't people want to continue to complain, and they want Alex Bregman. And I guess before I get to that, I want to bring up they also spent money on Gleyber Torres.
I like that
to man second base. I'm cool with it. I also think it's, again, the incestuous relationship of the 5 teams we cover here. Gleyber Torres was the key piece that the Cubs traded to the Yankees to the Yankees to get Aroldis Chapman that cemented the 2016 World Series. Just that the fact that he's coming back to the Tigers, of course, is just amazing. But what's really interesting about that is with that move, they have decided to move Colt Keith from second base to first base, which Colt Keith was among their best young hitters last year. He had a very slow start, and he really came on in the last 3 to 4 months and showed that he belongs in the majors. His defense was suspect. That got somewhat better, but not nearly as improved as his offense was. So I think they may have seen a deficiency there that just defensively that would make sense to bring in a proven second baseman like Torres. The offense is solid, but nothing compared to the projections that most had while he was a prospect, and
right,
just never quite fulfilled that. But he definitely improves. It's an improvement for the Tigers for sure, offensively and defensively. The most interesting part about that is Colt Keith moving to first means the end really for Spencer Torkelson.
I know.
Unless something drastic happens, what's next for Spencer Torkelson, the former 1-1 overall pick? Just 2 years ago in 2023, had 31 home runs, and now he's not projected to be on the major league roster. He's definitely projected to be with AAA Toledo next
Sounds
year.
Like a White Sox player to me.
Well, it's a trade potential, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. The parallels between it's funny. The parallels between him and Andrew Vaughn
are really
interesting, because didn't they both go to Arizona State? Or I know they're friends. They kind of have similar builds. I feel like Vaughn's never had the 31 home run season, but he's been a little more consistent, but not consistently great. But I feel like their numbers probably average out to about the same. So it's a really fascinating move, and I feel like it's a smart move that Scott Harris is not fucking around. Like, if you are not producing, you are not going to be on this roster anymore. We are not dealing with that shit. You need to produce to earn your spot on the roster. And Torkelson's got that opportunity in spring training and potentially the first part of the season in AAA. He can force his way back onto the roster, but he does not have that spot as of today. So I thought that was another shrewd maneuver by Scott Harris to just say, this is serious. We're not coddling. Even if you were the number 1 overall pick, you got to fucking produce, or you're not going to be here. We're here to win. That comes down to now the conversation about Alex Bregman. And like I said, this has been the most popular conversation for both the markets I've lived in. Chicago is talking about Alex Bregman going to the Cubs, and Detroit is desperate. Feels like so much of the media and so much of the fan base is desperate for Alex Bregman to come to the Tigers. And honestly, this is so weird. Like, wearing now the third hat, I'm wearing an A's hat right now, but I'm definitely a Tigers fan, number 1, Cubs fan, number 2. I think I'd rather have Alex Bregman go to the Cubs than to the Tigers. What's going on with Bregman right at the latest is he's come out and said he's not interested in anything but a 6 or 7 year deal. And to that, I immediately thought of the line from Rounders. Yeah, and I want a blowjob from Christy Turlington, but it's not going to happen. So just the idea that like we've gone this far into the offseason and no one is clearly offering him that. And he keeps saying that. And his agent, Scott Boras, is saying that it's not going to happen. And what is going to happen is he's going to have to settle for either less money or fewer years. And at this point, I think he's 31 years old. He's seen his numbers decline, not dramatically, but they have declined over the last 3 years. I don't see a 31-year-old getting necessarily suddenly better. I don't want the Tigers to sign another 6-year albatross deal that they continuously have done over the last 10 years that have burned them. You could start with the Miggy deal, the Miggy extension. That's a mixed bag because they did not win the World Series, but he certainly helped them be one of the most competitive teams in the American League, if not all the majors, all that time. The last several years of that was horrendous. Yet we were treated to milestones such as his 3,000th hit, which I witnessed live, his 500th home run. Those were fun. You're not going to get any of that shit with Alex Bregman. So in the waning years of his career, his deal with if he comes to Detroit, how quickly people forget about the almost the identical deal that the Tigers gave to Javi Baez is amazing to me. How they just want to jump right into bed with another 6-year deal. He was only $140 million. The Astros originally offered him reportedly six years, $156 million. So for Detroit to get him, it would obviously have to be more than that. So it's pretty much speculated it'd have to be 6 years, $180 million for him to come to Detroit. The advantage that Detroit has is we have his former manager that he might have a fantastic relationship. And AJ Hinch, they might have a terrible relationship. I don't know. They won a World Series together, so I would say it's probably pretty good. But I thought they were going to be able to parlay that kind of thing to get Carlos Correa a few years ago, and that didn't come to fruition.
No, you definitely thought that.
Yeah. So whatever the Tigers have to do, whatever the Tigers have to do to get him is they're going to have to overpay, and I do not want the Tigers to do that. They are not in a position to be able to absorb yet another failed long-term contract.
I'm sorry, but don't you feel like this is starting to shape up to be another failed Boras bullying attempt that's going to turn into a $30 million contract with 2 option years?
Yeah, and this is where I'm going with it, actually. They have absolutely overplayed their hand. It is so obvious. He would have, if anyone was willing to give him 6 or 7 years for $180 million, he would be signed already. No one wants to do that. Teams have dropped out of the race. The Astros say they're done at this point. The Blue Jays were involved at one point and they're out.
Yep.
There's 3 teams left: Tigers, Cubs, and the Red Sox. Red Sox is an interesting scenario because I think he would want to play there. They've got the Astros have the ridiculous bandbox with the short porch in left field that Alex Bregman has taken advantage of for years. Just the ridiculously short distance to the seats in left field. Well, the Red Sox have the fucking stupid green monster. So he'd go from one ridiculous miniature golf course of a stadium to another one, hit the ball in the clown's mouth, and you win the World Series.
Wow.
I've raged against Fenway
the machine
for a long time.
Rage against the Fenway.
Yeah, I have done that for a long time, but it's just a stupid ballpark when you think about it. But so I could see him going there, but they have maybe the best third baseman in the majors in Rafael Devers. So he would have to move to second base for the rest of his time.
Yeah,
so
don't fuck with the babyface assassin.
Does he want to do that? I think that is a potential out there. I think the Cubs would be of at least my 2 teams that I'd want to risk getting Alex Bregman, or that could benefit from getting Alex Bregman. I'd want the Cubs to get him because I think if the Cubs get him, it would be a short-term deal. It would be, like you said, like a pillow deal. Bellinger signed.
And Correa too.
Correa did the first time. Yeah. Like a 3-year deal, but with opt-outs after every year, but with big ABV or annual value. So big money, but not long-term. I don't think he would do that with the Tigers necessarily, but I think he would do that with the Cubs. And the Cubs can certainly absorb that. I spent the whole first half of this podcast talking about that. They have plenty of money to be able to do something like that. So I think why this is taking so long is GMs like Scott Harris and Jed Hoyer are taking their time. They're not gonna continue to bid against themselves or each other because they know Scott Boras and Alex Bregman have overplayed their hand, and they're just gonna have to lower their asking price. So I think it's more likely he goes to the Cubs, or at least I'd be happier of my two teams if he went to the Cubs. I could see Boston stepping in and ruining the whole parade, but just because I think he'd maintain his good numbers for a while with that ridiculous ballpark. I think his numbers are going to decline rapidly, but I think he's probably got a couple good years left. I think that's a perfect scenario for the Cubs to sign him for 3 years for $100 million if they have to. Right. They could do that, and I think that'd be a great scenario. It'd be would I? The question comes back to would I rather have Cody Bellinger or Alex Bregman? And the Cubs, I guess the Cubs' bigger need is at third base. They have first base and center field covered. That's where Bellinger got a little redundant. So that's where it made some sense to trade him, but not for pennies on the dollar like they did. So I think maybe the Cubs would be up closer to that Pacoda projection. You said it was almost 91 wins.
Yeah. Yep.
I think if they sign Bregman, it puts them right there. He would do similar things for the Tigers, but again, the price and the years they'd have to pay for him to come to Detroit, I think would be way too punitive. And if they didn't put it all together and magically win the World Series in the first 2 years, it would be, the law of diminishing returns very quickly and just be another huge albatross of a contract for the Tigers. So yeah, I put together a graphic already for this segment. I'm saying Bregman is. It's just, it's fucking 2 degrees out in February. I've got to do something indoors. So I put a graphic together called Crossroads with the Cubs C and the Detroit Tigers D at the end. So that's where Bregman is. He's got to make a fucking decision. Hopefully soon.
What do you think about this? There's been a pivot move that's been floated out there for both teams that since they are the heavy favorites for Bregman, that either team, whoever loses out, will pivot to Justin Turner. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on that?
That's a great question. I saw that proposed today, specifically for the Cubs. Turner he's old. How old is he now? I didn't look that up before the show, but
he's got to be old. He's older than Bregman. That's
I would say. I think he's late 30s, not early 30s. So, first initial ideas, no thanks. Cubs would make a little more sense than the Tigers doing that. The Cubs do have Matt Shaw, their top prospect, is a third base prospect. So they could always lean back on that, but that is a risky proposition for a team that should be going for the division, should be going for a long playoff run. That's very risky to have, throw all your third base eggs into one basket that's never played in the majors. So
right.
I think that might make more sense for the Cubs. Tigers still have Matt Vierling to play third. They have Andy Ibanez that can play third.
He's 40, by the way.
Is he 40? Okay.
Yeah. He did have a 1.5 WAR last year, though.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
I think it would make no sense for the Tigers. Tigers can the thing that the Tigers are going to do if they don't get Bregman is they've got enough assets in their robust minor league system. They could trade away prospects to actually get a major league third baseman. I don't know who that would be immediately, but I think that's their plan B, their pivot. But I think I could live with it in Chicago. I don't think it'd be ideal. I don't think it'd be great, but it'd be better than starting with Matt Shaw. It would give Matt Shaw a little bit of a cushion. You could bring him up later. You don't have to rely on him on opening day. I think that's where it might make more sense, but it's an interesting, the key to that question you have is there are options. And that's another reason I think Boras and Bregman have overplayed their hand. Because the Cubs don't have to sign him, even though a lot of fans are demanding it. Same way in Detroit, like they definitely don't need to sign him in Detroit. They can figure out other ways to fill third. But I like it.
All right. Well, before we transition over to the Bay, I must give you your Tigers Pacoda.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I think this
Uh,
is
I,
bad.
I'm shocked by this. I was shocked by this. They are expected to finish above the White Sox in fourth place in the AL Central with with 79 wins and a 19.1% chance of making the playoffs.
Okay. 79 is outrageous. They won 86, but that was kind of crazy how they got to 86 on one of the best runs in the last 2 months of any season with no starting rotation. Um, I think I always put them around 84, 85. I think they'd still be there. What that says though, if they finish fourth with 79 wins, is the AL Central is going to have a lot of good teams. Besides, they're going to be beating up on the White Sox again. That I don't dispute. I think Kansas City is going to be. I think they kind of overachieved last year, but I think they're still going to be right there. Minnesota is the one. I think they're taking a step back. But Cleveland is just they're just always there, no matter what. They figure out they've just developed pitchers better than anybody else, and they're continuously in the mix. So I think that's saying they're going to be in fourth is less of an indictment on the Tigers, and it's more of an endorsement of how competitive the division is going to be, as everyone's going to be over 500, except for I don't think the Tigers are going to be below 500. But that was probably all. Was that done after the Jack Flaherty signing? I'd be
No, I think it was probably done before the Jack Flaherty
boy.
signing.
I'm fascinated by that. That's a
Two
that's,
well two 2/11 2025. So
that's today.
today, yeah, they updated it.
Okay, boy. I feel that's low. I feel that's 5 games too low for the Tigers
What
and 5 games too high for the Cubs. So that's interesting.
what year is it? Where are we? What day is it?
you you love these Pacoda projections.
I love them because I also love to like laugh at the end of the year sometimes too because
Yeah.
I mean, as I always will bring up, the Sox the year they won the World Series had they penciled them in for like 70
Yeah.
wins, 70
Yeah.
wins on the dot. So
Yikes.
well, we'll lead with Pacoda since we're talking Pacoda. I just want to be done with Pacoda for today. The Giants are penciled in or digitally inked in at 78.2 wins, so right around the Tigers with a 15% chance of making the playoffs. So I'm not terribly surprised by that because one, they're in a powerhouse division, the Padres.
Yeah.
And I think again, you're right. Like with the Tigers, it's also for the Giants. It's a indictment of the division they play in, and you know, obviously we don't have the weighted schedule anymore. Where you're
Right.
playing your division
Way too much.
way too much, but still,
You still play them a lot.
you still play them a lot. So you play them twice each place. I think it is.
It went from 19 games each
To
division
like
opponent to
12,
like 12 or
right?
13. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's still significant, but it's definitely significantly lower.
Obviously, Pacoda has not been impressed with the Giants offseason, which is a perfect segue into their most recent signing of as when you text me that Verlander was signed by the Giants. I believe I text back. This is the text I wanted from you 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So
Again, the most incestuous relationship of our 5 teams. Like Verlander has to,
Jesus.
of course, go to the Giants.
And
Unreal.
think about it, another Astro moving into one of our teams. Like
Yeah,
that's even crazier
exactly.
when you think about it.
Well,
I
the other
mean,
crazy thing in along the aesthetics idea is he's only played for teams with orange in their color scheme.
I know. I thought about that
It's
too.
It's just a weird thing. Like he's
Isn't
only
that
been at the
fucking crazy?
Tigers, Astros, Mets, and now Giants. So he's got to clearly go to Baltimore at some point. Baltimore is actually unveiling full orange uniforms this year, which we'll have to
Ooh.
talk about at some point. Back in the 70s, in their heyday, they had the orange jerseys with the orange pants. So they're reintroducing those this year, which look ridiculous if you ask me. But fun stuff. So yeah, like the Tour de Orange, I heard it referred to Justin Verlander's career. Got to have orange in the uniform.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he came back from an injury last year. He only pitched in 17 games, had a negative WAR, I think, for the first time in his career.
42
Yeah,
years old. I mean,
yeah.
kind of
I
have to
mean,
expect that. I'm surprised he's coming back, but if they're going to give him, what was it, 1 year, $15 million
yeah,
deal?
1 year, 15 million. What's really interesting that the one part that does bode a little well for the Giants is he was way better, which is surprising to me, away in his 17 games than he was at home.
Mm.
Um, he did 6 home games and 11 road games, but his strikeout to walk ratio was 1.9 at home, but 3.2 on the road. So
Wow.
opponents batted all his numbers. Like he let up. He had a 919 OPS at the Astros, whatever the fuck their ballpark's called, Minute Maid.
Minute Maid?
Minute Maid. Yeah. He had a 919 OPS. He had a 710 on the road. So, I mean, maybe he
what's going
did.
on there?
Maybe it was time for a change. So
That's what happens when you pitch in a miniature golf course park.
yeah, and he's definitely not going to a miniature golf court ballpark now. So he's going to a very spacious ballpark. So
that's interesting.
So that could bode well for them. But I mean, honestly, my thoughts on it, like I said, I think I summed it up best as a text I wanted 5 years ago. I mean, it's just, I don't think he's going to be god awful, right? I don't, especially like getting a full spring training in and everything. He's a quality pitcher. I mean, last time he came back from an injury, he came back better than ever. But I mean, obviously he was a much younger then too. But
yeah, let's not mince words here. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's the best pitcher. You could argue he's the best pitcher, of a decade if you talk about the mid 2000s to the mid teens.
Yeah.
He's won MVPs, Cy Youngs, best pitcher. I'd say the best pitcher in Tigers history. That unfortunately that is years past. I think I like your ballpark for him. I think that makes a lot of sense. It's just if he can stay healthy and have velocity, and those are major question marks. So
I think there's an opportunity here though, because he does have, he gets decent. He has, out pitches, right, where he has a lot of movement on a slider,
yellow hammer,
and a curveball and things like that. The question is, we saw something incredible. Was it like 10 years ago? Mike Mussina kind of written off, and the Yankees had him on his final year of his contract, and he reinvented how he pitched because he had lost velocity and it was a complete failure the year prior. What does he do?
He won 20 games in his final,
and retires. He retires.
That's the way to go out.
He retires at one of his greatest moments and said, "It's not going to get any fucking better than this. I'm going out on a high note."
He almost threw a no-hitter the first time I ever went to Fenway Park.
So
he was with the Yankees, and it was 2 outs away. Carl Everett got the base hit. Everyone, even Red Sox fans were pissed off. Actually,
yes, I remember that story. They were like
2001, a week before 9/11.
I don't think Carl Everett was necessarily a fan favorite anyway, wherever he played.
I don't think so. He didn't believe in dinosaurs either.
No, dinosaurs were not real.
We are old. This is a 24-year-old reference right there.
But what I will say back to is, Verlander's not an idiot. He's a smart pitcher. If he knows his velocity isn't going to be there, then I could see him sort of reinventing how he approaches the game with the Giants pitching staff, and he could, quite possibly have a pretty a decent enough season. I'm not here saying, who knows, the prediction show, maybe I'll go all in Giants again and go crazy like I did last
like
year.
Usual.
Yeah, like usual. Yeah, but
well, I'd love to see it. I'm not too optimistic we're going to see it, but I'm certainly going to root for JV. Not rooting for your Giants, but I think I'm afraid it's an easy landing spot. Take $15 million and live in San Francisco for a year and enjoy your last season in the majors. But
yeah,
I'd love to see him go out with a bang like Mussina. It's a good reference right there.
Well, I think at this point normally we'd be going to the other side of the bay, but that's gone. So we're going
we're going north.
We're going to the highway and
Yeah,
driving north.
It's actually a little north and a little east, I believe, to Sacramento, where the formerly Oakland A's, now the Noakland A's, now reside for the next 3 years, playing in a minor league ballpark, which is fucking hilarious. One of two major league teams playing in minor league ballparks this year, as the Tampa Rays are actually playing in the Yankees spring training facility, because the Tropicana concrete blister of a dome got ripped apart by a hurricane last year, and it's going to take years to rebuild. So just crazy that there's going to be two major league teams out of 30 playing in minor league facilities all year. But the A's chose that fate. The Rays did not. Some news over this last 2 months for the A's. The Minister of Propaganda, as I've referred to him, former A's president, David Kaval, basically succeeded in his one goal in fucking over the fans in Oakland, moving his team out of the city, now to Sacramento, and maybe to Las Vegas, and just decided mission accomplished and resigned as A's president. He's now moving into the private sector or wherever, but it's just crazy that he's like, I'm going to do everything in my power to fuck over everyone in Oakland and just call it a career. That's his swan song. That's what his legacy will be going forward. So congratulations, David Kaval, for a job done. Other ironic news for the A's is they not only did they sign Luis Severino for a substantial sum that I cannot remember specifically, but they signed Brent Rooker, their best player, to a 5-year, $60 million extension.
I know. I blew my mind.
It's really good business, and it makes sense for anyone but the A's, who have now spent over $100 million this offseason as soon as they leave Oakland. I don't think they've spent $100 million on their roster over the last 5 seasons in Oakland. But as soon as they leave, they start to spend money. It's just like you were saying, it's a slap in the face of everyone in the city of Oakland. Just bizarre. I guess it's cool. I don't know what Oakland fans are going to do if they're going to be paying. They're probably not going to pay any attention at all. But if you are a diehard baseball fan, do you follow the Sacramento A's? They're giving you some reason to by finally spending some money on the roster, which they clearly chose not to, just to get them out of Oakland and to turn the fans against them and just make it seem untenable. It's just crazy. So it's such a dichotomy of emotions. Like, yes, you need to sign a terrific player like Brent Rooker. He was on your fantasy team last year, championship team.
My championship team, yeah.
39 home runs, 5.6 WAR. I think he had 112 either runs or RBI. I can't quite remember, but an incredible player that no one's ever heard of because he was stuck in Oakland all this time. But he deserves a 5-year, $60 million. He probably deserves a lot more than that. Why he would sign that is confusing to me. Why Severino would sign. I brought this up last episode. He signed a 3-year deal guaranteeing he will spend all of his time in only Sacramento, which is strange. So I don't know what's going on with that, but it's a good move by the A's, but it's such a frustrating and annoying thing that they would do. They would start to spend money only after they get out of Oakland. Another final story I want to talk about with the A's is the sad passing of Ricky Henderson, who's the most iconic player in Oakland A's history. I mean, I'd say arguably, but I don't even think it's arguable. You could say Reggie Jackson maybe, but the best player they've ever had. My favorite player, certainly my favorite A's player, maybe my favorite baseball player of all time. Just the most exciting player throughout his career. The perfect combination of everything you need out of a baseball player. Better than anyone. I mean, he leads. I mean, he's got the steals record, 1,406 steals, which is over 400 more than second place Lou Brock. But he wasn't just a speed merchant. He, as exciting as he was on the bases, anytime he got on base, whether he walked or got a single, he'd be on third. Like it was just an automatic. He would steal second and steal third. But that's not it. He was a power hitter. He He has a career, I think, is 820 OPS, 122 OPS plus. He had one season over 1,000 OPS. He had two seasons, 1985 and 1990. 1990, he was the MVP, but he led the league in steals and had an OPS over 1,000. You could argue, and this comes back to a fantasy perspective, and this is where I first really started paying attention to Ricky Henderson. It was before our time, of course, but if we were doing fantasy leagues back starting in 1980, there's no way anyone but Ricky Henderson wouldn't have been the number one pick.
Right.
From basically 1980 through 1993.
Yes.
Because he would have led the league in steals and still gotten you 20, 25 home runs. His OPS was right up there every single year, not just getting steals. And that's such a conundrum for fantasy owners these days, because you pay for steals, but you get no power production, which that was not the case with Ricky Henderson. You could argue he not only was he the greatest fantasy baseball player of all time, he's probably the best leadoff hitter of all time, easily, with a combination of power and speed. So he passed away. Really, I don't know if it was unexpected. I didn't know he was sick. I hadn't heard anything about it. It was just all of a sudden he was gone. And I made a graphic for that too. It was just too fast. He was so fast and he was just gone way too fast. It's just a sad thing. And I feel like he was from Oakland. He was an icon of Oakland. He played with the A's on multiple occasions, most of his career. I feel like this Oakland saga of the A's moving out broke him and it killed him. I'm going to blame John Fisher, David Cavall, and everyone for moving the Oakland A's out of Oakland for the death of Ricky Henderson. I'm going to say the premature death of Ricky Henderson. It pisses me off. It's just such a ironically perfect punctuation. Like the A's are gone and Ricky's gone, and it's brutal on so many levels, and it makes me sad and angry at the same time. So I wanted to make sure we talked about Ricky. I'm wearing my A's. I broke out my A's garb, my A's gear tonight on a rare occasion, because I hate representing anything that John Fisher's associated with, but I have to do it for Ricky. We're gonna miss you. He's the greatest. He said it himself. I am the greatest, when he set the record. And that I remember when that happened. I remember watching SportsCenter that night, because the same day that Ricky broke Lou Brock's record for the number of career steals, Nolan Ryan threw his 7th no-hitter. It was the same day. And I remember, I forget who it was on SportsCenter, but did a whole diatribe on how 7 was greater than 780, whatever the number was. That just because everyone bristled at Ricky's, verbose, ego-ridden statement, but he was the greatest. He was stating a fact more than anything, and he was just such a fun character. You've heard all the stories referring to himself in the third person, which is hilarious. He told the story. His first words were, "Mama, Ricky needs a bottle and a fresh diaper." just fun stuff like that. He framed his first $1 million check from the A's. He didn't cash it. He just put it in a frame because he thought this is what you do with $1 million check. He was so proud of it. He didn't care about the money. It was just the idea that he got $1 million check, until the A's accounting department called him up, like, "Have you cashed this check? Like, what's going on here? Like, our books aren't ready." He's like, "I put it on the wall." Like, that's just Ricky. He just didn't give a shit about anything other than being great. And he was the greatest. So thank you, Ricky. We're going to miss you.
Well, I guess that moves us over to our asshole of the week, right?
I think it does. Yes, asshole of the week. I believe you've seen this story, and I've got to pick your brain about some certain things. I know very little about gambling or gambling accounts, but our asshole of the week is former MLB umpire Pat Hoberg.
Yes.
Who was fired last week for not only having a shared gambling account with a pro poker player, but also deleting messages on his phone that inhibited the investigation into this that has been conducted over the past year. apparently, I don't think he umpired any games in 2024, but he was under investigation after the 2023 season for, I'm assuming he had, it's either a FanDuel or DraftKings account, but it was shared with this pro poker player who I can only assume is just a buddy of his.
Right.
But why would anyone, you're a FanDuel guy or DraftKings? I don't remember.
Fanatics. Yeah, Fanatics.
Oh, Fanatics is okay. I didn't realize they were a player.
I get money. Every bet you place, you get fan cash. So then I just get shit for free. So.
Oh, merchandise. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. That's a real racket right there.
Yep.
Okay. Beyond that, would you share an account with a friend of yours? Like, why would anyone do that? Do you understand the logic behind that? Have you ever heard of that?
The only reason I think they could share an account is for some reason, maybe, is it because it just makes zero sense to me why an umpire would do it, because they know the rules.
I wouldn't even back off of an umpire. Just people. Why would any normal person share an account?
Because the person's not allowed to have an account.
Well, that's what I think. It just seems like it seems like nefarious on the surface. It doesn't seem innocuous. Like, oh yeah, friends share accounts all the time. Why wouldn't you just have your own account other than you're trying to hide something? Obviously he is a major league umpire, well aware of the rules against betting at all, but certainly betting on baseball. But his poker buddy was betting on baseball, and it just seems crazy to me that you would so foolishly make it obvious. Like, he didn't hide his name. His name was like partly on the account somehow. Like, it wasn't like a pseudonym or anything like that. It was Pat Hoberg. I've got this account, but I'm not gambling on baseball. But my buddy, the poker player here, is. The other weird part about this is he was like one of the best umpires out there. He had scored a actual perfect game in the 2022 World Series.
Yeah.
He got every ball and strike called right. And you like the umpire scorecard Twitter feed, and that's where they calculate that. He got 100%, which is, I don't know if that's ever been done in a World Series game. He was great. So we're losing one of the few fantastic umpires because he is an idiot. Is he anything but an idiot, or just an asshole?
I mean, it's so weird because, in that AP article, every game that they bet on, he had no controversial calls. He did nothing wrong. Every game that his friend bet on, there was nothing. They cite everything. There is nothing done to change that. In fact, one of the games, he had a 98.9% home plate calling ratio. He had some close calls that were upheld by replay. He was the replay official once and got a call right.
Yeah.
And MLB even says, to back him up, that there is no foul play.
Well, MLB has an interest in saying there's no reason to believe there is anything nefarious, because they're jeopardizing the sanctity of their own game if they say, yeah, he fucked all this stuff up. So I don't fully believe MLB, but I do believe the data saying he like wasn't fucking up at all, even on the games that his buddy was allegedly betting on. So
in 23, he finished top 5 in accuracy.
Yeah. So this is just, number one, I want to believe there's nothing nefarious going on. And it sounds like the evidence is saying, but he deleted a bunch of text messages that could have incriminated him more. Like, why are you doing that? Like, what?
Because he knew what was going to happen.
Well, he knew it was going to happen either way, but it makes you a little more nervous that something weird was going on besides that. It's just, I'm really hoping he's just galactically stupid is what this comes down to. Like, what, sharing an account with a buddy and gambling on game. I hope it's nothing more than that. And I think that's what they've concluded, that he's been fired, and we lost one of the few really good umpires just because he's just a jackass. And
well, he can reinstate in 2026 though.
Is that what they said?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe he'll just come up with a pseudonym when he wants to start a gambling account with his buddy. I would welcome him back, because he's been so good. But I don't see how that's going to happen. You can't have that with. You just can't have that association with umpires, no matter what his track record is. So,
like I said, if anyone should be investigated for his last Diaz should be fucking investigated for throwing games, because
that would make sense.
He has a fucking he has his. I think it's something like he's like one of the lowest rated accuracies in him and like Angel Hernandez. Angel's retired now, but
thank Christ,
forced retirement. We all believe, but
yes,
So
those cases, if those guys were gambling on games, it would actually make some sense, like why they're so bad at their jobs. But
I think this just goes back. He's just an asshole, not because he knows that the rules.
Yeah, exactly.
The fucking rules. It's not like it's like in the fine print. Oh, and by the way, don't open a gambling account. Yeah. You heard of Pete Rose?
Yeah, I mean it's just a slam dunk. Pat Hoberg, you are asshole of the week.
Fucking idiot. I mean, asshole, idiot, like you said. Like, what the fuck?
I say galactically stupid.
I have a live on-air message for you. I was told Charlie text me. I told him I was doing the podcast. I get back to him. And he said, well, let Smitty know that the Tigers are terrible. So there you go. The Tigers are terrible. If you would like me to tell him something, please.
Oh, boy. I've spent the last 13, 14 years ripping on your White Sox, and I have so many lines that I'd like to... Is he 13 years old now?
He is 13. He's about to be 14. 14.
Oh, wow. Almost. He's deep into his teens.
Yeah, he's going to be a freshman next year.
I think I'm going to wait till he's 15 before I unleash the full fury of White Sox rage and ripping upon ridicule, because it's just an avalanche. I mean, to compare the White Sox and Tigers, especially at this moment, is laughable, but I appreciate his trash talk. I'm looking forward to you and your son being in our fantasy league. We got to start talking about a draft date. Actually, we are mid-February already. We've got Cubs pitchers and catchers have already reported. Tigers are reporting tomorrow. No, everyone's maybe Thursday.
Everything by Friday, right? Yeah. Everyone's in by Friday, so
we got to start talking about a draft date and what works for you and Charlie. So I'm excited. I'm ready for winter to be over. This has been a brutal winter. We've got another winter storm coming. You might be getting it tonight. I'm getting it here in Michigan tomorrow.
10 a.m. starting tomorrow.
Yeah, we're starting at 3.
4 to 8 inches.
We'll see. They make a big deal about this shit, and then it never happens. But so I'm recording. I was happy to record this tonight, so I will be chopping up the video during the snowstorm tomorrow. Get this all out to you. We'll see. I guess the next big news. I mean, Alex Bregman's got to sign sometime. I don't know if we can do a whole show about it, but hopefully the White Sox do something. There's going to be stories coming out.
Maybe that's going to be the news. The White Sox sweep in, and because they're going to need someone to be signed for like 6 fucking years, and they have the money.
If that happens, we're dropping everything to do an emergency podcast as soon as the news crosses. That would be tremendous. I'd love it.
Fuck all you guys. Fuck you and fuck you.
Just imagine how Charlie will feel.
Yeah.
He'll be more arrogant than ever. That's great. With that, I think we can wrap up this episode 157. Good to be back. We went pretty long, but we've been gone for almost 2 months. So had more to talk about than we thought. Got to get these baseball thoughts out there. Hopefully we'll be coming to you on a more regular basis. In the meantime, you can find us at majorleagueaholes.com. I have closed the aesthetics.shop domain because it seemed kind of silly to pay $50 a year for that. You can still get there by going to majorleagueaholes.com and then go to the shop link down at the bottom. You can find us on social media at Major League A-Holes and at Sox Type Thing. You can find our YouTube channel, which I've neglected for these last 2 months, but it was still going strong. We are up over 300 subscribers. So check that out, youtube.com/Major League A-Holes. And you can find this podcast anywhere you'd like to find a podcast. So with that, I think we can declare this podcast is over. Peace.
Wow.
Third Hole Media.